Imagination is the true reality. This is not merely a poetic idea or a comforting phrase. It is the fundamental truth of life. Everything that you see, hear, touch, taste, or smell in the outer world is the visible manifestation of your inner world. The world around you is not happening to you, it is happening through you. It is your imagination, your inner assumptions, your persistent mental activity that becomes clothed in the garments of physical experience. Imagination is not a tool, it is the substance of reality itself. What you imagine with feeling, continue to entertain, becomes the blueprint for your external world. To understand this, we must reorient ourselves from the belief that the world is objective and independent of our thoughts. Instead, we must begin to realize that the world is subjective, a mirror that reflects back to us the states we occupy within. You can observe this truth if you look carefully at your life. How often have you experienced moments where you anticipated something with conviction, and it came to pass, not because of chance, but because you lived in the inner conviction of its reality? The person who walks in fear finds fearful situations. The person who walks in confidence attracts opportunity. Why? Because life is obedient to the tones of consciousness. Imagination sets those tones. If you imagine consistently that you are successful, valued, and prosperous, and you do so with sincere feeling and faith, the world must rearrange itself to reflect that. It is not a matter of hoping or wishing. Wishing admits separation. Imagination fuses desire and fulfillment. When you imagine something as if it were already true, you dissolve the gap between wanting and having. You are not attempting to convince anyone outside of you. You are only convincing your own consciousness. That is the only place where change truly occurs. And once you change your inner conception, the outer world cannot resist. It must conform. This understanding eliminates the need to manipulate people or struggle with conditions. You don't need to force outcomes. You simply assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. By doing so, you impress your subconscious mind with the reality you have chosen. The subconscious does not argue. It accepts the impressions given to it through feeling and repetition, and it expresses them in your external experience. This is why idle imagining, daydreaming without emotional investment, often produces little. But sustained imagination with belief and emotional charge becomes causative. What you feel as true, you create as fact. It is through imagination that you align with new states of being, and all states already exist. There is no future to create, only states to enter. Imagination is your vehicle. It lifts you from where you are to where you desire to be, not through physical travel, but through spiritual movement. When you persist in imagining that you are already the person you wish to be, something remarkable begins to unfold. You change your vibration, your assumptions shift, your responses alter, and life meets you on that new level. Imagination is also the key to transformation. You do not change your life by fighting the old. You change it by imagining something new and embodying it as your reality. If you constantly relive old patterns, retell the same painful stories, and replay the same inner dialogues, your life will remain a faithful replica of your dominant thoughts. But if you dare to imagine boldly, to feel deeply the presence of your desired reality, and to remain loyal to that vision, even in the face of contrary evidence, your world must change. The outer world is simply a delayed echo of the inner world. Imagination goes first and reality follows. This is the law. This is the secret. Whatever you imagine to be true of yourself and others becomes your experience. Not because it has moral weight, but because imagination shapes consciousness, and consciousness shapes life. You are never a victim of circumstances, but always the author of them, whether consciously or unconsciously. The choice is yours, to let imagination run wild and reactive, or to guide it deliberately and lovingly toward your highest vision. When you realize that imagination is not separate from reality, but the very cause of it, you stop waiting and start creating. Not by force, but by assumption. Not by effort, but by vision. And in that realization, you become truly free. All states already exist. This is one of the most powerful truths you can ever absorb, and once it is fully grasped, it transforms how you approach life entirely. You no longer chase or struggle to become something you are not. Instead, you begin to realize that everything you could ever want to be, do, or have is already present, not in some future moment or distant place, but in the eternal realm of now. within consciousness. Life does not unfold because we earn it through time or effort. It unfolds because we align ourselves with already existing states of being. The world operates on a spiritual principle that transcends physical limitation. Creation is finished. Nothing is to be created, only manifested. What we think of as becoming is actually just selecting. Every possible state you could imagine, wealth, love, health, success, peace, is already completed and exists as a dimension of reality, like stations on a radio dial. You do not build the music. You tune into the frequency. Likewise, you do not create abundance or love from nothing. You shift into the state where it already exists, and it becomes your experience. This understanding removes the false belief that time or external circumstances are the keys to transformation. The idea that you must wait for conditions to change or that you must earn your worthiness is based on an illusion. Time is not the creator, it is the revealer. It reveals what you have accepted as true internally. The moment you dwell in a new state within, feeling it real, accepting it as who you are, it begins to outpicture itself. And the world, being a reflection of your inner consciousness, has no choice but to conform. Each state is complete and whole in itself. The state of being wealthy contains its own thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and behaviors. The same is true for the state of being loved, or healthy, or confident. When you move into one of these states through imagination and assumption, you don't have to figure everything out. The state takes care of itself. It begins to think through you, act through you, and reflect itself through your outer experiences. You do not have to force change. You only have to identify with the new state and dwell in it consistently. This is not imagination as fantasy. It is imagination as selection. Your consciousness is the great selector. And every time you choose to feel a new reality as already true, you are moving yourself into that state. You may not see immediate physical evidence, but the shift is real and will soon externalize. This is why persistent assumption is so crucial. It is not about hoping something will happen. It is about knowing that you have already entered the state where it has happened. Understanding that all states already exist also empowers you to forgive and release the past. You are not bound by your history. Your past does not define your future unless you continue to live in the state that produced it. The moment you change your inner state, you are no longer the same person who had those experiences. You have entered a new dimension of consciousness, and the world must reflect the qualities of that state. You are free to move into any state you desire, not by striving for it, but by assuming its reality. The only limitation is your ability to persist in the assumption. Each state is like a garment. You put it on in imagination and wear it in feeling until it becomes natural. And as it becomes natural to you internally, it becomes normal to you externally. There is nothing you need to do to create the state. It already exists. Your work is to accept it, feel it, and identify with it. When you understand this, you cease being a victim of life and become its master. You realize that life is not happening to you but through you. And you begin to live from the understanding that your desires are not just wishes. They are invitations to step into states that already are, waiting only for your conscious acceptance. Assumption is the bridge between the unseen and the seen. It is the invisible link that connects your inner desire to its outer fulfillment. What you assume to be true, even if there is no physical evidence to support it, begins to mold your reality in ways the logical mind cannot fully grasp. Assumption is not mere wishful thinking or idle daydreaming. It is the conscious acceptance that what you desire is already yours. It is the act of mentally and emotionally living in the end, feeling the wish fulfilled, and knowing with quiet confidence that it will outpicture in the world around you. This is how creation unfolds. Everything begins within. Before any condition manifests, it must first be assumed as true in the mind and felt as real in the heart. You do not wait to see the change in your environment to believe it. You believe it, and therefore you see it. Assumption precedes manifestation. The world does not shape your inner state. Your inner state shapes the world. To assume is to dwell in the feeling of the end result, as though it were already part of your present experience. It is not pretending, but accepting. You mentally occupy the identity of the one who already has what is desired. If you want to be successful, assume the posture, the inner dialogue, the emotional tone of success. Walk, speak, and think from that state. Do not wait for circumstances to confirm it. Your assumption is what creates the conditions that make it possible. This is a law. It operates regardless of your awareness of it. You have always been assuming, consciously or unconsciously, and life has faithfully reflected those assumptions. If you have assumed struggle, lack, or rejection, then you have likely seen those patterns repeat. But once you become deliberate in your assumptions, you begin to take control of your life. You understand that the world is not random, it is responsive. Assumption works through feeling. Mere words, if unaccompanied by emotion, carry little creative power. But when you combine thought with feeling, when you feel your desire as though it were a present fact, you impress it upon the subconscious mind. The subconscious does not question or argue. It accepts whatever is felt to be true and expresses it faithfully in the outer world. This is why it is essential to assume the best, not from hope, but from conviction. You must remain loyal to the unseen reality, even when the physical world appears unchanged. Persistence in assumption is the secret. Do not fall into doubt when nothing seems to be happening. The seed grows in silence. Your assumption is the seed, and your emotional persistence is the water. In time, it must break through the surface and become visible. Assumption also bypasses the need to manipulate or force change. You do not need to change others or push events into place. When you change your assumption, the people, events, and circumstances that match that new state begin to appear naturally. The outer world adjusts to reflect the new vibration you are offering. This is how you move effortlessly through life, not by fighting against reality, but by assuming a higher one. Even when evidence is contrary, assumption remains the bridge. It is the act of faith, the inner knowing that what is real within must become real without. This is not blind belief, but a spiritual principle at work. What you consistently assume becomes your experience because consciousness is always expressed. You can only experience what you are conscious of being. So if you wish to change your life, change your assumptions. Let go of trying to figure out how your desire will manifest. That is not your task. Your task is to assume the end, to feel it real, to dwell in the joy, the peace, the satisfaction of already having what you desire. This inner movement is what causes outer change. It is the unseen shift that births the visible outcome. You are not at the mercy of fate. You are the operant power, and assumption is your tool. Use it wisely, faithfully, and consistently, and life will reflect the truths you dare to accept. Through assumption, you walk the invisible bridge between the world as it is and the world as you desire it to be, and eventually, the two become one. You are the operant power. This means that nothing and no one outside of you holds creative authority over your life. It is not fate, not chance, not external conditions, nor even other people who shape the course of your experience. It is you. Not the surface version of you that responds to the world, but the inner you, the one who imagines, assumes, believes, and feels. You are the cause. Everything else is the effect. This truth is both empowering and humbling. Empowering, because it places the fullness of creative potential in your hands. Humbling, because it removes any excuse to blame the world. When you understand that your reality is a mirror of your inner state, you stop trying to change the reflection and start changing what is being reflected. You are not a passive observer in life. You are an active participant in shaping every aspect of it. You are not waiting for permission, timing, or favorable conditions. You are choosing, moment by moment, what state of consciousness to occupy, and from that state, your experiences are born. This is not about external action. The true power is internal. It lies in what you accept as true, what you feel to be real, and what you persistently assume about yourself and the world. There is no external power governing your life. No external deity, authority, or system holds the keys to your fulfillment. The only power that can truly affect your experience is your consciousness. It is always projecting, always expressing. If you believe yourself to be lacking, the world will mirror lack. If you believe yourself to be loved and worthy, the world will reflect that worthiness in people and circumstances. The world cannot help it. It is bound to respond to your internal command. To be the operant power is not about controlling circumstances through force. It is about realizing that you do not have to react to appearances. Instead, you respond from the place of inner authority. If something undesirable arises, you do not panic. You do not accept it as final. You recognize it as the product of a past state, and you move inward to assume a new one. It is this assumption, made in stillness and faith, that begins to alter your outer world. Your thoughts are not just passing clouds, they are seeds. Your inner conversations are not meaningless, they are instructions. What you dwell upon internally writes the script for what you will encounter externally. Every belief you hold is an agreement you have made with life. The good news is that you can rewrite those agreements at any time. You can choose to see yourself differently, believe differently, expect differently, and life will follow suit. There is no need to beg, plead, or wait for something outside yourself to grant your desires. You do not need to be chosen, approved of, or validated by the world. You are already chosen by your own consciousness. The moment you accept a new state as true of yourself, the creative power within begins to shape reality accordingly. It doesn't ask for confirmation, it moves in silence and in certainty. Many look for signs before they believe. But the truth is that the belief itself produces the sign. You go first, you imagine first, you feel first, and the world follows. To wait for outer change before changing within is to surrender your creative power. But when you embrace your role as the operant power, you no longer wait. You create by moving into the state of the wish fulfilled. You are never a victim of circumstances, only of unconscious assumptions. Once you become aware of your role, you begin to deliberately occupy the states that reflect your highest vision. You choose your thoughts. You command your attention. You feel deliberately. And life, being the obedient servant of your consciousness, responds with perfect precision. This is not about ego or force. It is about responsibility and alignment. You are not fighting the world. You are instructing it by what you believe and accept within. Knowing that you are the operant power is the beginning of true freedom. You cease looking outside and instead turn within, where all change begins. From that center, all things are possible, and life becomes the mirror of your chosen state. The law is impersonal and certain. It does not care who you are, where you've come from, or what you think you deserve. It responds not to effort, emotion, morality, or good intentions, but only to the state of consciousness you consistently occupy. Like the law of gravity, it functions without judgment, prejudice, or exception. Whether you apply it knowingly or unknowingly, it is always at work, shaping your reality with exact precision based on your inner assumptions. This law is the bridge between the unseen and the seen, and it functions mechanically. It operates through your imagination, your feelings, and your assumptions. Whatever you accept as true in your inner world, especially when infused with feeling, will express itself in your outer world. If you assume lack, struggle, or delay, you will experience circumstances that reflect those states. If you assume ease, abundance, and success, then those experiences will follow, not because the law favors one over the other, but because it reflects consciousness exactly as it is presented. Many misunderstand the nature of this law because they attach personal emotion or moral weight to it. They believe that being good or working hard should guarantee results. But the law is not a moral agent. It does not reward goodness or punish wrongdoing. It simply reflects what is dominant within your consciousness. This is why those who live in fear often experience more fear, even if they are kind or hardworking. And it's why those who live with an inner certainty of abundance often find their needs met effortlessly, even without earning it in the traditional sense. The law is not governed by effort. You cannot force manifestation through willpower. You cannot beg or plead for it to work. It does not respond to desperation. It responds to clarity, to assumption, to feeling. It listens only to what you are inwardly convinced of. When you dwell in the feeling of already having what you desire, the law begins to arrange the outer world to reflect that state. But if you dwell in worry, impatience, or doubt, the law will faithfully reflect those vibrations instead. This impersonal nature of the law is not something to fear. It is something to understand and master. It means that your current circumstances are not the result of luck or punishment, but of past assumptions. And more importantly, it means you can change them at any time by assuming a new state. The law does not hold grudges. It does not require penance. The moment you shift your inner state, The creative power of the law begins moving in a new direction. Once you understand this, you begin to take your inner life more seriously. You become aware of your self-talk, your feelings, your assumptions, and where your attention habitually rests. You recognize that nothing is accidental. Everything is a reflection. And because of this, you stop reacting to appearances and start responding with inner authority. You learn to hold your state even when external circumstances seem unchanged, because you understand that persistence in assumption is what produces the shift in reality. The law is predictable. It is reliable. It is not moved by begging, ritual, or external performance. It is moved by faith, faith not in something outside of you, but in the unseen reality within. You are always creating through your assumptions, whether you realize it or not. When you consciously align yourself with your desired state and remain there mentally and emotionally, you activate the law in your favor. You don't have to know how it will happen. That's not your role. The how belongs to the law. Your only task is to live in the end, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, dwell in the knowing that it is already yours, and trust that the law will take care of the details. The more you try to interfere, the more you delay the result. But when you rest in assumption, when you maintain your inner state regardless of appearances, the law must deliver. It cannot fail. It has no awareness of failure or success. It only reflects. And in this truth lies your greatest power. You are not at the mercy of circumstances. You are at the mercy of your own assumptions. Master them, and you master the law. Master the law, and you master your life. To receive is not to chase, beg, or strive. It is to allow. It is the quiet inner art of letting what already exists come into form through you. When we talk about receiving in the context of the spiritual law, we are not referring to passivity, but to conscious alignment. It is not about sitting still and doing nothing, nor is it about forcing outcomes into being. To receive is to open your inner state to the feeling of already having, already being, already knowing that what you desire is yours. Most people confuse receiving with getting. Getting implies lack. It implies something is out there, and you must go out and get it. Receiving, however, is the act of accepting inwardly that what you desire already is, and allowing it to express itself outwardly in your experience. You are not trying to acquire something from the external world. You are allowing what is already present in the unseen to take form in the seen. This is why receiving requires a state of inner stillness, of confidence, and of surrender, not to outside forces, but to the divine creative power within. You cannot receive what you are resisting. You cannot receive what you doubt. You cannot receive what you refuse to feel as already real. This is why the inner work is not optional. It is essential. The moment you declare a desire, it is already fulfilled in the unseen. The only thing that stands between you and its physical expression is your willingness to receive it without question. This means letting go of the how, the need to control every detail, and the urge to second-guess your worthiness or the process itself. To truly receive, you must become the version of yourself who already has. You must think as that version, feel as that version, walk and speak and exist as that version, not from imagination as mere fantasy, but from imagination as a creative, living force. When you close your eyes and dwell in the end, imagining the feeling of your desire fulfilled, you are not playing pretend. You are aligning with the state in which receiving is inevitable. The world around you may not shift immediately, but internally, you have moved, and that movement will soon be reflected. Receiving is also about trust. Trusting that the law is faithful, that consciousness truly creates reality, and that once you have assumed the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the law must bring it into form. This trust is not passive, it is powerful. It is the kind of faith that does not flinch when appearances contradict the inner reality. It is the calm knowing that the seed has been planted and will bear fruit. Even if the soil looks dry today, the one who receives is the one who persists in the inner knowing until the outer must conform. Often, people block their own receiving by returning to states of doubt, fear, and lack. They desire something, but in the very next moment they look for signs, question the timeline, or declare through emotion that it's not here yet. This is the opposite of receiving. True receiving is living from the end, not reaching for it. You do not need signs to believe. Your belief is the sign. You do not wait for evidence to feel successful. You feel successful now and let the evidence unfold as a natural result. Receiving also means allowing yourself to feel worthy of the desire. If you secretly believe you are undeserving, you will subconsciously block the very thing you say you want. The law does not decide what you're worthy of. You do. And what you accept for yourself, the law reflects. You must claim it boldly, not arrogantly, but confidently, with the understanding that your desire is not random. It is divine instruction. It is life asking to express more of itself through you. To receive is the most natural thing in the world when you stop resisting, when you stop chasing and start assuming, when you stop doubting and start dwelling. You are not meant to struggle through life hoping something good will happen. You are meant to recognize that good already exists and align with it. Receiving is not about effort, it's about awareness. And once you become aware that everything you want is already finished in the invisible, all that remains is for you to relax into the feeling of it, hold it as true, and let the law of life bring it into view.